Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Improved Podcast, the official podcast of Classic Studios. I'm your host, Chase Collins, and happy Monday. Happy 5 a.m. morning to you. I don't know if anyone actually listens to this at 5 a.m., but that's when I schedule it to go live. So, boom, you wake up first thing in the morning, it's ready for your listening experience. I hope you all have been enjoying this month of fitness-themed programming. We are winding down the end of January, have this podcast, and then one more ready for you all. And I'm very excited for you all to listen to these podcasts. This is part 2 of 100 Days Without Drinking Alcohol, featuring my good friend Brian. So we did part 1 at the top of the month, and now we're going to do part 2, where we've completed the 100-day challenge, asterisk. And you'll learn about that later in the podcast. But yeah, it was a super interesting experience. Allowed me to, self-reflect and all of that. And it was great having Brian along on the journey. Or maybe for Brian, it was good to have me on the journey because he started this thing. And I just bandwagoned it up and decided to join him because I thought it would be a fun little game to play. And it was. Yeah, I hope you guys are excited to hear that. If you want to jump around, there are time codes in the description box. And with that, I hope you all enjoy this podcast and have an excellent week. I hope you set your goals for this week. I hope you achieve your goals for this week. And if you want to stick around towards the end to hear about my goals for this week, go ahead and do that. And I will close out this podcast then. All right, I'll catch you later. Bye.
Improved Podcast. Improved Podcast. Improved Podcast.
All right. Hello, Brian. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, Chase. Thanks for having me back on, man.
Yeah, for sure. So this is part 2 of our 100 Days Without Drinking challenge that we've been doing these last several months. Brian, you actually just hit 100 days without drinking like a couple of days ago, right?
Yeah, so I'm on day like 101 or 102. I'm going to start counting less frequently now that I've hit that 100 point or that 100 day goal. So, but yeah, I just finished it.
That's sick. I'm at it's like 90. Oh, I guess I can back count. So my 100-day mark is January 1st. So it's the 28th, 99, 98, 97, 96, day 96, asterisk. So I guess I got to talk about the elephant in the room. I did have a drink, ladies and gentlemen. I had a drink between now and the 100-day mark. It was on day 77, which, fun fact, I think we recorded a podcast that day, and I had a drink that night. And it was to celebrate me getting a new job. So I think you're allowed to break the streak. I think we talked about that before we committed to this, that if any of us get a new job or there's a birth in the family, you're allowed to have a drink. That's not really true, but I broke the rules and I'm trying to justify it. But it'll be 100 days, January 1st, asterisk for Chase. So yeah.
Yeah, man, there doesn't need to be any like hard and fast rules to this. Like we're just doing it as an experiment, to see if our relationship with booze changes or just a chance for reflection, really. So we're going to be talking a lot about that today as well.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I don't know. I've talked to a couple of people about this, and I haven't found a great way to explain it because it's always like, "Oh, you have a problem?" And I'm like, "No, we're just like exploring our relationship with alcohol. It's nothing like we felt we had a need to. It was just like, hey, let's try this thing out." And it's always like, "Oh, okay. All right, let me know if you want to get a coffee." It's like, oh God.
Yeah, it's like this thing that's been a constant and just been a given, right, for our entire adult lives. Like, oh, well, why is it like that? Because it makes me feel bad sometimes. It makes me feel bad more often than I'd like it to.
Mhm.
So why? Like, that's just the question. Why do I keep doing it?
Yeah.
And through this 100 days, we've had a lot of answers to that questions, and whether or not we have an answer that we like, or whether or not we have a hard and fast answer, that's kind of a different story. But we've gone through this process of a little bit of that self reflection and been able to establish, oh, okay, I understand a little bit more about this. And for me personally, I guess I'll just say, um, I hit the 100 days, and I had that day on day 100 where I was able to think back. And it's weird to say, but my drinking days, I'm doing air quotes, my drinking days seem like so long ago. I've really enjoyed these 100 days, and I haven't woken up hungover. I've had great sleep. Um, it's easier to it's easier to be healthier in general, like in terms of consumption.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel tempted to do like a late night like binge of just like crappy food.
Yeah.
I've saved money. Like, I'm more dependable. We have some sober driving stories that we've talked about here and there. Um, and yeah, I'm just really enjoying it. So I've decided, well, you know, I've decided I'm just gonna not drink anymore. I just don't drink anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah, for the long haul. I know we're gonna talk about it later in the podcast, but for the long haul, I'm gonna be dry. I've just really enjoyed it.
That's awesome, man. So that's sort of, yeah, like you took, this 100 days, and after reflecting on it, you came to the conclusion that it's not worth going back to.
Yeah, when it was a part of my like routine, my habit,
Mm-hmm.
oh, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever. It was kind of like passively happening. Like, oh, I guess I'll crack open a cold one, or I'll pour a glass of wine or whatever. But now it would require an active decision to drink.
Yeah.
And that active decision is that extra step in my brain. It's like, why would I do that? And then I think about it. It's like, well, I'm not gonna feel as good tomorrow, even if I have one or two drinks,
Yeah.
because at this point, it's such a great thing waking up in the morning feeling totally good to go, waking up at 5, getting the workout in. You can't do that. You can't do that consistently and enjoy it if you're even having one or two drinks that night before. Like, it totally wrecks it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what's going on for me.
Yeah. Yeah. We've had a bit of a different journey these last 100 days, and I think it's interesting. Um, you've come to the conclusion of sort of, going for the long haul, and I'm not in that camp. I don't foresee myself doing this again. I mean, maybe it doesn't really matter, but I don't think I'm gonna draw the line at like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna be dry or anything like that. Um, I foresee myself having a drink like on New Year's Day and everything like that, and I sort of want that, I guess, but I don't know why. And just like you were getting to, there's the decision making process to have a drink. You have to make that conscious decision as opposed to it being a passive one, and that's something that I'm wrestling with as I'm approaching this 100 days. I'm like, why I can't justify it. I'm struggling to come up with a reason that's good enough to indulge in alcohol. And it's an interesting, it feels like not a rock and a hard place, but just like, why do I want to do that? And that's something I need to like explore personally, I guess, is like, why do I have this desire still to, consume a drink on a given day? Like, it doesn't, I know there's no benefit to it, but I still, it's like, oh, but I haven't been able to do this for so long. Like, I want to, I want to do it. And it sounds silly.
Yeah, no, I totally know where you're coming from. And at the very beginning of this challenge or experiment, whatever you want to call it, the goal coming out of it was never like, okay, I'm like definitely going to be sober forever.
Yeah.
It was just a chance to take a step back and allow yourself to have those thoughts, like, why am I doing
Hmm.
this? So to your point, um you like wrestling with that decision is exactly the point of this, and like why we did this in the first place. And no matter what you do, you've gone through that 100 days. You know that you don't need it. You've had a period of probably better health. And your decision making in the future is probably going to be better for it just
Yeah.
because you've allowed yourself to have that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely enjoyed it overall. It's been a good experience, and I've liked having this, period to really reevaluate at how much of a factor alcohol plays in my life, and that's been fun and interesting to explore. And I said this on the first time we on part 1, but you know for me, I wasn't drinking heavily sort of to begin with. I think we were both like in that moderate drinking category. So going from like not drinking very often to not drinking at all, the benefits were like marginal, right? At least that's how I felt. I was still already waking up at 5 in the morning consistently, running and doing all those things, but I was already factoring in like, okay, I can't drink today, or I can only have one in order to meet those goals of, running and everything like that and waking up early. So it's interesting how those, I don't know, like the benefits were the delta was small for me. And so I feel like I can go back to what I was doing and not, and maybe that delta will be larger now because I've had that 100 days off, but I don't know.
Yeah, and everyone's going to have a different experience with it, definitely.
Hmm.
um, for me, um, that delta, it hasn't been crazy big. Like my day-to-day life isn't really much different, but that even one hangover just to me isn't worth it anymore. Any like one night of bad sleep, like one, I ran out of reasons, and I think we mentioned this in the first podcast. I ran out of reasons to justify it. I ran out of reasons to drink.
Yeah.
It was just a total net negative because
Hmm.
every positive that I got from drinking, I could have sober. Like for example, we had a party. We hosted a party last night, and pretty much everyone drank, not heavily. Or at least I don't recall anyone drinking too heavily. But I don't know if anyone noticed me not drinking. It
Mm.
was just, and I was able to, it was like it wasn't the alcohol um that that created the party and got everyone together. Like the alcohol is just, seasoning, salt and pepper that makes certain social uh environments a little bit more, fluid, perhaps for some people. But I was able to just totally, and I've been going to get-togethers and happy hours and what have you, and I've been just drinking water or like a soda or something.
Hmm.
Um, Soda water is like my favorite, club soda.
Oh yeah.
Uh, yeah, Perrier. Oh yeah, it's my go-to. And it's like, yeah, it's nothing's changed. I still enjoy talking with everybody. I still enjoy sharing stories and laughing and joking. Um, yeah, it's like I am drinking, but it was never the alcohol. It was just the fun social interaction in the first place.
Yeah. I I'm living in Florida, and I don't have I don't like go out too much or anything like that. So I don't have those like social situations where it's expected or common to be drinking. And so when I was up in Virginia, I was in a couple of opportunities where everyone was drinking and everyone was drunk, and maybe this will transition to my sober driving story, but it was interesting like being the sober one, and it was just funny, like watching the folks like drinking. And like my friends, they like to party, so they're slamming beers and taking shots and stuff like that at the clubs and at the bars and stuff. And it's like, oh wow, like all right, let's go. And they're like getting looser and looser till the end of the evening and everything like that. And it's just like, wow, like you guys are out of it. And it was funny, like, and I enjoyed the time and everything like that. And I was just drinking water, like I had my little tiny plastic cup with a straw in it, and I was doing a little dance. And I felt really awkward the whole time because
everyone's drunk and they're just dancing away and having a good time, and I'm just doing my little back and forth shoulder dance. But it was fun, and the opportunity. Last time we were on the podcast, yeah, you had a sober driving story of just like, yep, I can go ahead and sober drive, like no issues. And I had that too. Like we had 2 cars and 6 people or something like that, and um one person was not drinking with me or had a couple of drinks or whatever, still good to drive. And then the other folks, they just drove up to DC and were like, yeah, we're getting messed up. Like, we're just going to have a good time. And so then we needed to leave. And they were like, Chase, we're going to have to, you're going to have to drive. And I was like, yeah, no issues, no problem. And it was cool being able to like provide that service, I guess, or being available to do that. Um, yeah, I don't know. I liked that. That was nice, but it was also annoying because I didn't know where I was going, and the drunk person was doing the GPS and was canceling it every 5 seconds. Like, oh no, we're going to a different place. Oh no, we're going to a different place. And I was like, oh gosh, this is no good. Um, but yeah, it was interesting. Like, it would have been fun to, I guess, drink with them, but I don't think it would have been more fun. Like, I still would have been awkwardly dancing in the corner. Like, it wouldn't have changed anything if I had like a drink or a couple beers or anything like that. So it's another like, just like you explained how nobody noticed you weren't drinking. Nobody would have noticed if I had a drink or if I didn't have a drink. It would have been the same because I because
Yeah,
the alcohol is not the reason for getting together. It's the social interactions.
absolutely. Yeah, and you probably remember it a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the specific things that's nice is, and maybe, maybe some people can relate to this. Maybe everybody can relate to this, I don't know. But waking up and not asking that question to yourself, like, oh no, did I say something stupid? Or, oh, when I was talking to this person, did I say too much? Or did I sound like an asshole? Or, something like that. Like that thought doesn't occur in the morning.
Yeah.
Because I was, oh no, I remember exactly how that went. And I was, sober for it. I didn't make a fool out of myself. Um, whether or not the opposite of that story where you were drunk, whether or not you did make an asshole out of yourself or whatever, um, you know, even just asking that question and having to be like, is that how it went down? I don't remember. And just feeling kind of, I don't know if the word is guilty, but you know what I mean? Maybe a little bit ashamed. Like that shame
Yeah.
doesn't happen. So
Yeah. That's something I really have found that I don't know if I like this about myself, but it's something that I've learned about myself as I've gotten older is like I'm pretty much a control freak. I like to be in control of things, and a part of that is like being in control of your own, mind and body. And when you're under the influence, you're not and you can mess up and make mistakes and say things maybe not even like mean or rude but just in a way that wasn't as good as it could have been. Just like getting down to the minute details of it. But yeah, I definitely relate to that in a big way. The yeah, it's a control factor for me. It's like I don't want to be out of control in a way that can jeopardize like one like relationships, but also, and we touched on this last time, like even making dangerous decisions like getting too drunk and driving or something like that. It can be you know scary, and not like that's gonna happen. Oh, you have one drink, like you're at risk. It's you have to be pretty far gone for those types of situations to happen. But the chances are certainly lessened if you don't indulge.
yeah, yeah, it's crazy. It's kind of interesting you brought up um, drinking and driving. I saw an article the other day, and I'm gonna butcher the number on it, the statistic, but it was something like 40% of all traffic accidents at night involve uh, people with alcohol in their system,
Wow.
which isn't really too surprising, but still,
No.
it's like wow, maybe maybe not all of the 40, maybe not every accident is caused by someone who is drunk driving. But even your like your defensive driving skills aren't as good when you're
Mm,
drinking, even if you've only had a couple drinks. It didn't say 40% of the people were over the legal limit. It said 40% of the people had out, like, 0.02, 0.04, whatever. And
yeah.
even at those levels, you're not all there. You're not in full control.
Right. Right.
Whether you have 90% control, 85% control, you know, who knows? But
Yeah.
it's not 100%. And
And
for something
people,
like, yeah, go ahead.
no, people get in accidents, stone cold sober, but the other guys, drinking or something.
Yeah. So it's just crazy how, I don't know, just how prevalent it is and how it affects decision making and judgment.
Yeah. When I was
So
in when I was in college, and this is a bad joke, ladies and gentlemen, but when I was in college, I was in a statistics class and they were talking about like, yeah, if you're at 0.08, the legal limit for driving while drinking, you have a 17% chance of getting into an accident. And my smart ass, I chimed in. I was like, "Oh, that's not so bad." Like 17%. Hey, that's all right. You're telling me I have an 83% chance to get home? That's pretty good. Those are good odds.
yeah,
Um,
that's crazy.
of course I was joking. Of course I was joking, but
Yeah. What are the odds of you not getting into an accident and also not getting pulled over? I'm sure that
yeah,
chips away at that 83%.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, and man, everyone knows somebody, or maybe not everyone, but I feel like everyone knows someone that has a DUI or something like that. And it's just such a, people that usually make pretty good decisions.
Hmm.
They have that one lapse of judgment and they get a DUI, and man, does it it doesn't ruin their lives, but it certainly affects it.
Yeah,
It's a big deal getting a DUI, especially nowadays. So it's just like, why risk it? I don't know.
yeah, for sure. It's yeah, not a good thing. Bad decisions can come. But going into sort of what you touched on a little bit earlier about like the shame and that's associated with like hangovers, I guess. And that's one of the reasons why folks get into like a pattern of habitually drinking is, that shame, right? Like you drink you one night, you like make a mistake or whatever, you wake up, you feel guilty, so you start drinking again in order to, mask that guilt. And as opposed to, facing it head on, you choose to, hide away and cope with like alcohol. And then it suddenly becomes like a cycle of drinking. And that's not good. That's another dangerous side that we never really touched on our um first episode of like the binge drinkers, or the folks who drink consistently and heavily. And I don't even know if I feel comfortable to talk about it too much because we're not experts on any of this stuff. We're just a couple of guys having a good time doing a little challenge, but it
Yeah,
is
yeah,
part of it.
absolutely. The way that I understand it, at least, is, just like you said, people get into this pattern of being ashamed and guilty, so they drink to cover it up.
Hmm.
And then when they try to quit alcohol, that shame and that guilt doesn't go away. They just, like, at that point, it's in their face,
Hmm.
and they have to deal with it sober. And that's a really difficult part of becoming sober for a lot of people, I think. Um, is that now it's like, okay, now you actually have to deal with it. Like, you
Yeah,
can't just escape to
those
to
demons.
booze. Yeah. Um, yeah. So I think the next thing that we want to talk about, is our plan for the future, and uh, using what we learned during this experience and taking it forward. So what are you gonna do? I mean, I know that you've mentioned you're gonna have a drink here and there, but overall, this has been good experience for you, hasn't
Yeah,
it? You know what I mean?
yeah. No. I'm just pulling your leg. But yeah, no, it's definitely been a good experience and I've learned a lot from it. It's been an interesting, journey. And I think there's still learning I need to do with my relationship with alcohol. Not like I had a problem or anything like that, but there's something going on where I'm asking myself, like, I'm still trying to come up with reasons to drink. And none of them are good enough for my, sober brain, my rational self to be like, oh yeah, there we go. That's the answer. Um, so yeah, again, like I don't I don't plan on drinking too much or definitely probably less than I was drinking, which again wasn't very much to begin with. So it's um my plan is to just like keep going forward. I'm actually excited to start drinking a little bit to start writing some more. I'm hopeful that I can start drinking and then start writing some good stuff for my screenplays. I did note that the second I stopped drinking, my writing plummeted. So that could have been
Yep.
holidays, that could have been travel, or it could have been the alcohol. You never know. Um,
Yeah, I read somewhere, which is like the worst way to start something like this, but I read somewhere that alcohol can spark your creativity,
mm.
but caffeine can like hold it for longer.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, not that it has too much to do with what we're talking about, but yeah, that makes sense. Like, writer's block, the lack of booze could have been a contributing factor to that.
I'm That's interesting. What are your plans for the long haul with drinking and alcohol?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I'm just gonna I don't drink anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just I'm just sober. I don't know. It's been really great, and the most awkward thing about this whole experiment has been during those social settings, like at Christmas, for example. Of course, everyone's drinking during Christmas. Like,
Yeah.
it's Christmas. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, it is.
Um, but I wasn't, and not everyone at Christmas knew that I was abstaining from alcohol. So they were like, "Oh, come on," like, and I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm good. Like, I'm driving."
Yeah.
And someone made like an AA joke.
Oh,
It was
really?
like, no, not really. Like, of course, because if you're not drinking, then you're an alcoholic.
Right.
Um, but now I feel, the longer this goes, it'll be like, oh no, I just don't drink. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
and then I'll have those conversations with individuals or just groups of people to be like, oh yeah, I'm just doing this for my health or, whatever reason.
Yeah.
And there would be that less of an awkward situation where it's like, wait a minute, why aren't you drinking? It's like, oh no, he just doesn't drink. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
so
that's how my grandparents on my dad's side, my grandma my grandmother, she grew up with like an alcoholic father, I guess. And she's, in her 80s, right? So she's never had a taste of alcohol ever. It
whoa,
never crossed her lips. Like she grew up, in a household that alcohol was a problem, and so she said from like a very young age, like alcohol will never pass my lips, and she's never done it, and that carried on to like my aunt and uh folks like that. Just like, yeah, I don't drink because it was never part of my household growing up and things like that. And I don't. I think it's just like, yeah, I don't drink. It's never typically I don't see people like press it that much. But then yeah, awkward jokes like about AA and stuff. It's like,
yeah, depending on the group or you know how how many they've had already, they could
yeah,
jeer a little bit, but also like I don't care,
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
whatever.
Well, this has been awesome, Brian. It's been a great podcast for one, but also I love this challenge. Thanks for bringing it to the table and bringing it to my attention. It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I've had a good time doing it. And for anybody listening, if you could take anything away from these
Oh,
2 episodes, I know, right? It would be to yeah, perhaps just give it a shot. If you don't want to do 100 days, just do 2 weeks and see how you feel. It really opened my eyes. I never had a problem with it for one thing, but it was just a really good experience, and I came out the other side feeling a lot better and knowing a little bit more about myself. So I would encourage anybody to try it.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of, Michael, he jumped on the train a little bit late, but he did sober December. I think he's like 33 days in or something like that. That's pretty sweet.
Absolutely. Yeah, good for him.
All right, well, I'll catch you later. Goodbye, Craig.
All right. See you, Craig.
Whoa, hello everybody. I hope you all enjoyed that podcast. It's so interesting listening back to it. While, a couple of weeks removed from having recorded that, and it's really interesting where I was at the time of recording. I think I was just about to get sick, and if you guys know, I've been sick for the last couple of weeks. It's really put a damper on this new year, and so I was describing, I was like, oh yeah, I'm excited to have a drink for the new year. And I rang in the new year like 8 p.m. in bed asleep because I was just so sick. So yeah, it's just interesting. And like, I was right about drinking less. Like I've had one drink maybe since recording this podcast, and it's just, I don't know, it's not something that I'm interested in anymore, really. Like there's nothing on my own, at least, like, I don't think I would see myself, I don't see myself grabbing a drink just like while I'm down in Florida. Like I think when I'm up in Virginia and I'm hanging out with my boys and the friends, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna have a couple of glasses of wine or beer or whatever and enjoy my time with them. But like I can't rationalize it or justify it to myself. It's interesting. And yeah, I'm glad that I'm in that, state of life where it's like alcohol's not a priority for me right now. It's good. It's a good place to be in. I hope you all enjoyed this podcast. I hope it maybe inspires you to take up a challenge. Not necessarily this, but just something to push yourself and see how disciplined you can become and what are the results that come from that. I think it's an interesting way to do it. And yeah, shout out to Michael for joining us on this, drinking thing. And maybe this is a spoiler and I don't want to speak on his behalf, but I know he had a couple of drinks for like the New Year's or Christmas or something like that. And the next day he was like, yeah, this was a complete waste of my time. I did not enjoy that. The hangover was not worth it. I'm not going to be really, he said he has no interest in alcohol. And I think I'm, in that stage as well. It's really, really interesting. As far as goals for me for this week, I have been a lazy boy this past week. Just still recovering, getting into the swing of my new routine with a new job. So just figuring it out. Need to get back on my screenwriting adventures and, working on this podcast and stuff. I got next week is going to be a great podcast with all the boys from my accountability group. You'll get to meet some new faces there, so that'll be fun and exciting, and that'll close out the end of January, our fitness themed program. We have one more podcast left. If you want to get in contact with me about goals or projects you're working on, shoot me an email at theimprovepodcast@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. I want to give a shout out to Green Bean for all of our musical intros and outros. I also want to give a shout out to you all for listening. Thank you so much for doing that and for being a part of this little adventure that I'm, diving into. And thank you for sharing. Thank you for listening. Thank you for leaving a 5-star review. It really helps out the podcast and all of that. So with that, I think that's really everything from me. I will see you all next week. I hope you set your goals for this week. I hope you'll achieve your goals for this week and come ready for Monday, where we wrap up this fitness-themed month of programming. All right, I'll catch you next week for another episode of the Improve Podcast. Goodbye.
Podcast.